Dan?
Thanks, Annette. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for taking time out of your busy day to explore this exciting topic with us. So at Accusoft, one of the things we've really focused on is continuing to innovate around document processing and taking advantage of a lot of the tools that we have available, as well as kind of new tools that are emerging in the market. And so today we want to talk a little bit about that. We're going to do just kind of our agenda for today. We're going to do a kind of a quick kind of recap of just kind of what's the current state of document processing today, and just kind of as a foundation of where this is building in from. Then I'm going to do a quick demo to show some automated and intelligent document processing, and just a sample, just a taste of kind of what's available out there, and that some of the technology that Accusoft delivers. And gives a kind of insight into where we're headed with the Prism Doc product. And then we're going to step down and go through an example use case. It's actually kind of multiple use cases within a broader use case of the mortgage application process. And I specifically chose that as an example because there's lots of things that happen in that process that translate to lots of different industries in terms of some of the technology that we have in the automated document processing space that can be used. And also most people have purchased houses at some point in their life, so they're pretty familiar with that process. And then we're just going to lead into how Prism Doc and Accusoft are bringing tools to kind of help our customers future-proof in terms of being able to take advantage of these new technologies and keep up with what's going on in the world. As you know, with AI, there's new technology there, new things that are coming out every single day almost. And so how do you keep up with that in a way that is manageable for your business? And then, as Annette said, we'll finish it up with a Q&A. Just briefly about Accusoft, for those of you that are new to us, Accusoft's been around for 34 years as an innovation leader in the document processing space. We're headquartered here in Tampa, Florida, and locally owned since the inception of this company. We are a global company, though. We have over 1,250 customers worldwide, and trusted by a lot of large brands and companies globally to deliver this technology in their applications, and we provide world-class customer service is something we're really proud of. So this is a little bit about Accusoft. So let's talk about document processing today. So the processing of documents, of course, over the last couple decades has become more and more digital, obviously, but it's become even more than just documents, right? There's things like Slack or Microsoft Teams and all these different chat tools. There's lots of different types of files that people are dealing with in their workflow, and more of that becomes digital. And as it becomes digital, there's just this overwhelming amount of information that's available. And so companies are wrestling with how do they effectively manage all of this information, and there's things that can be introduced into that process, that like summaries of the content or classification and tagging of content to help organize that. And in the past, a lot of companies are still even doing this very manually. So those things happen where somebody will go in and manually tag it, or they'll manually write up those summaries. And you're seeing the evolution of that, right? The technology that's out there specifically with AI can help to kind of automate a lot of those things. But using these automations really can help drive a lot of efficiencies within their workflows. And so it's how do they get there today from where they're at today in their processing? How do you get to that built into your application in a way that is efficient and accurate and reliable, and really save you a lot of time and efficiencies? And of course, when you start to talk about AI, one of the things that's critical is as customers are, businesses today are looking to like integrate AI and they're doing testing, there's a lot of options out there. And what we hear from our customers all the time is they really want a trusted AI partner, somebody who that they know is going to be here in a year, 2 years, 5 years from now, and somebody that has expertise in the field. And so at Accusoft, one of the things that we decided to do last year is we partnered with IBM to bring IBM Watson X technology into Prism Doc, and we're going to show you a little bit of that today. When we talk about document processing, inside of an application. When you're developing your application, this is kind of what it looks like today. So if you have a document that you want to run through a process to do multiple different things, that involves multiple API calls. So for your developers, right, they know exactly what this means. They know they have to write each one of these API calls. There's a lot of API calls that could, if something fails in that API call or they don't get the right response back, there's just a lot of things that can go wrong. But also it's every time you want to add a new feature or update one of these, you might have to go in and update those API calls or add new API calls. It can be kind of a little overwhelming. So by the end of today, what we want to do is come back and show you what Accusoft is doing specifically within our PrismDoc product to help simplify this and help future-proof your applications to take advantage of the latest technology. So I'm going to do a quick demo just to show you an example of kind of what's the art of the possible with intelligent document processing. So I'm going to jump out here, and we've put together this sample document repository. This is just for demo purposes. I've got a document here that I've already processed. When you build a process, the first thing you need to do is you need to decide, like, what are those kind of steps, or what is the definition of that process? So when you do a process definition, right, you always start with, like, you're uploading a file that's coming ingested into the system, or this could be an action that you're calling from within your application. And then you want to say, okay, what are the different things we need to do as part of this process? And when we break this down with our mortgage application process, when we talk about that, you'll see, like, each one of those processes could be defined, kind of each stage could be defined as its own process. But ultimately, what it is about defining kind of what are the potential things that could happen with these documents and having technology that automates that process. And so in this case, one example I'm going to show you here real quick. I'm going to show you a couple things. The first one, you'll see all these branches of, doing OCR to convert the document from a raster image into some searchable PDF. Lots of other things around classifying, tagging, checking for, specific information, whether it's, if there's HIPAA data or if it should be flagged with COPA, summarizing the document, detecting PII. And in this case, for this specific demo, what I've done is I'm going to search for birth dates specifically. So if I have this kind of condition that exists, I'm going to automatically redact that. So I did process one document already just to show you really quickly what that looks like. So when I pull up this document, this was a raster image, like it was a scanned document. One of the things you'll see is I automatically applied a barcode just as part of that process. But you'll notice that I didn't redact anything automatically in here other than date of birth. So that's what I set up in the process that I defined. That was one that I wanted to automatically redact. Now, when you build out these processes, you can do this multiple ways, where you can have it automatically do that. You can have it where it just highlights and people can manually review it. So there's a lot of flexibility in how you implement this into your application. What I want to show here is what that looks like in the background. So when you talk about automation, I'm going to drop a couple documents in here. So when I drop some documents in here, you'll see that it starts processing those documents. But what I want to show is kind of in the background what happens. And this would be something that would be automated in your application. But when you set up these processes, you can see that it's going through each one of these documents and it's running it through that definition tree that we define for our processes. And it's doing those things like detecting, date of birth, and it can, these things can have prerequisites. So it's going to make sure that it's doing things in the right order. And as this continues to evolve, so you define these processes, one of the things that we're going to talk about today is how PrismDoc can help add and remove things to those processes in a very easy way. And then, of course, the advent of agentic AI will also feed into this in the future, as well as where you might be defining your process, but there could also be points in your process where it goes to an agent, and that agent is actually based on some results of whatever it processed, is going to make the decision of what that next step in the definition is. So this is just really quickly just showing you kind of this automatically happens in the background. And when that's done, as it processes each one of these documents, that's when you start to see things like the summaries come up and the automatic tagging and that type of stuff. So Just a quick intro into how the automation can work. So let's talk about use cases. And in this case, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about the mortgage application process. So there's really kind of 6 high-level, phases or steps in the process, and probably most people here are familiar with that. It starts off with the application process where the borrower is submitting their application, providing any initial documentation. Then there's the pre-approval process, where the lender reviews financial details, seeing if this person is going to be pre-approved. Then they go through loan processing, underwriting, approval and closing, getting ready to close, and then actual closing and funding of the loan, and then turning that over to the loan servicer. So that's just kind of a high level. And so what I want to do is break down each one of these and talk about some of the potential ways that the automated processing, data processing, is already being used or can be used, and the types of technologies that can be fed in there. So we'll start off with the application submission process. So this is a great example of being able to, bring in lots of different documents of different types, being able to identify what those documents are and categorize those appropriately so that they can be distributed and filed into your systems in the right place. And all that can be done automatically. And that's one of the things. So we just showed that, for example, in the processing demo that we just did, where when those documents came through, being able to identify, what kind of a document is it? Is it an email? Is it a legal document? Is it a contract? In this case, it would be, is it the application form? Is it somebody's driver's ID, driver's license? Is it their W-2? Is it, one of their bank statements? So all of those things can get tagged automatically, flagged, stored in the system. Now that translates to a lot of different industries in terms of bringing documents in, identifying them, and putting them in the right place. Another key part of this is data extraction. So being able to take those documents and pull data out of the documents, and this can be done in multiple ways. So with Prism Doc, we would deliver this through, we showed an example there in the demo where we had an image-based file and we converted that to a searchable PDF, right? So that's step number 1. So anything that comes in as an image, if you want to get that text out of it, you need to OCR it. And so that's one great example of something that would be included in your document processing workflow. And things like your driver's license, for example, there could be information on there that you want to extract. You want address, you want date of birth, you want license number. That's all information that can be extracted and used later in the process. You can also use a lot of AI here for data extraction, and this can be very specific things where you could have the AI identify specific content within the file and extract that information. And then that kind of feeds right into the next step, which is that automated data entry. So a lot of times that data is not just sitting there, right? That's data that needs to be brought into a loan origination system. And by doing this in an automated way, it can help reduce a lot of errors. And it can also make sure that you're more consistent in making sure that all the correct data is gathered. Which then kind of feeds into the next step, which is that completeness, right? Making sure that are all the right documents there and have all the right documents been filled out correctly. And this is, of course, a great area where AI can help be leveraged to help make that completeness check, just kind of making sure that everything is there ahead of time. So all of this is stuff that there's great opportunities for automating in this process so that when it goes to the next step, right, there's less time going back and forth in terms of making sure that all the initial information has been submitted. Of course, an area that we see a lot of customers using AI is in the form of chatbots. So being able to answer questions without having a live person on the phone, but able to answer questions in natural language that customers might have in that process. And then one of the things that Prism Doc does is we actually give the ability to do a very similar type of functionality within the specific document, even where you can ask questions about the specific document using our document Q&A feature. So the next step is the pre-approval process. And a lot of this can be automated where you're bringing all this data in And then maybe in some cases, if this document is something that's uploaded from the customer, being able to, like, again, extract that data and bring that data into the system. If there's a person that needs to be involved in the pre-approval process, you can automatically create a summary for them so they get a kind of summary of what's going on in this application. But the idea is that a lot of the pre-checks and the validation of the data can be done with the technology. And then things like validation of data across different documents. So, AI can be used to look at a set of documents and say, let's make sure that the address is the same on all of these, or that the person's name, that the applicant's name is the same across, or social security numbers, or whatever data you're using in the validation process. Let's make sure that those things are correct. So if there's something that's not lined up, we can flag that, and we can have that as like a pre-flagged thing for anybody who's going to review this later on. And of course, you can do it like rule-based flagging. So flagging any kind of anything when there's inconsistencies or missing information based on the rules of your specific business. So again, this is something that could apply to any industry, right? That we're very much talking about mortgages in this cases, but in your document workflows and your processing, it's very likely you have some regulations or some kind of guidelines that the documents need to comply with. And so being able to kind of do flagging when they don't comply, or take some kind of action based on the fact that they aren't complying. So you could be automated even there, right? So for example, if one of the checks was that, some document needed to be signed by the lender or by the applicant, that could be identifying the document as not being signed is a flag, but you could also then from that flag trigger off a workflow or something to automatically, route that document back to the person to have them sign it, or route the document to the appropriate person. And that's something that we see a lot with. So at Accusoft, we have a product called DocuBee that does that exactly in terms of managing workflows of documents for signature. So being able to pass that through and have that happen automatically. So the next step is loan processing. So this is where you really can start to take advantage of some of the AI capabilities that are out there today in terms of being able to analyze the data that's uploaded. And this could be data from like pay stubs, W-2s, tax returns, and taking that data to help, kind of just support the qualification of the loan, making sure that there's sufficient funds in accounts, and these are just things that and traditionally people will manually review and do these things, but making sure that all of those things line up, and also key things like making sure that there are like requirements around how soon or how recently you can have a big deposit in your checking account. So for example, if you can't have a large deposit within 60 days of the time of closing, that could be a flag identifying some kind of deposit that was made into the checking account within that 60 days that doesn't kind of line up with the standard standard deposit that this person would normally have. That would be a flag that they would want to raise. And there may be things that you can do to kind of validate and support why that deposit was made, but at least it can trigger those workflows off automatically. Also doing some like cross verification. So looking across the documents and comparing that data with other sources of data. So if, for example, somebody's filling out a form and they're answering questions like saying, have you had a bankruptcy? Have you ever, had, what was your credit score? What are any of these type of things that they might answer, but also making sure that validates with what they're actually seeing in the credit report. And again, eliminating that step of having a person who has to actually manually do that. And then of course, just kind of doing like a document checklist management. So being able to say, hey, do we have all the right documents? Are they here? Are they in order? Making sure they're good. And doing maybe some fraud detection, making sure that these documents are not fraudulent, and how that could potentially play out as, you know, as AI continues to evolve. Being able to identify patterns or something in the metadata or something in those documents that aligns with where they've seen fraudulent data before, and they can flag that as a potential fraudulent document. So just a lot of things that can be used to kind of really support that loan processing area. But again, going back to understanding how this stuff can be used in the different steps of your organization for doing things like that verification or automatic calculations or verification, or sorry, I said verification already, or you know, kind of just updating kind of checklists of making sure that we have everything that we need for whatever it is we're working on. And the next step in this process is underwriting. So this is where the key data is extract from like appraisal reports, things like appraised values, subject, you know, the property address, comparable sales data. All of these things can be brought together and again brought into summarizations. They can be brought into any kind of validation that you might want to do, just kind of, you know, compliance checks. And the other thing that's important here is that with lenders, making sure that these things apply for the lending guidelines. So this could be things like Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac have specific guidelines around what's required for approval of the loan. It could be like where the property is or what type of property it is. VA, for example, has requirements where, you know, perhaps they might limit the ability for you to purchase certain types of houses, like maybe certain types of condos or something. So those type of things can be automatically checked, like taking the data from the appraisal reports, running that through and saying, okay, this person's applying for a VA loan. Does this property, based on the data we got from these reports, meet the requirements for the VA loan? So they can, again, streamline this process by making that much more efficient. And then, of course, flag any potential issues and alert the appropriate people. Other things you can do is, you know, taking the data from the content or from the documents and then doing like a risk assessment. So looking at, you know, whether this is calculating some kind of, you know, risk score, or just kind of making sure to highlight any potential risks that, again, that could be brought up into like a summary. That could be done through, you know, tagging of a document, just in a way to like alert that underwriter. These are some things that you probably need to focus on and make sure you don't miss in that process. And again, it just kind of makes it more efficient. But again, this could apply to a lot of different organizations in terms of anytime you're looking at, you know, risk. It could be the risk of disseminating a document with PII in the document, right? So how do you make sure that you're accurately identifying that information and you're highlighting things and you're alerting people if a document contains some specific information? You saw in the demo we had like COPA in Child Protection Act, right? So being able to just quickly flag and say, hey, this document has COPA in it, or this document has HIPAA data. So make sure that people are aware of that document when they're handling and managing those documents. And then, of course, being able to bring all this information together, again, for organizing and putting that set of documents into a way that they can be processed and reviewed more efficiently. And the classification and tagging tools can really be important for that. Whether this is, you know, in this case, putting together a mortgage file, it could be something you're working on for like an illegal e-discovery case where you need to be able to make sure you have all the right documents to support the facts of your case. So lots of different industry. Could be insurance, you know, all the things that we need for an insurance claim, just making sure that those documents are all brought in, indexed, and kept together as part of the package. And then the final stage there is, well, next to final stage is approval and closing, preparing for closing. So at this point, you know, things like this is where you can start to get into a little bit more of the Gen AI. So, you know, we talked about Gen AI a little bit in terms of creating summaries, right? That's a form of generative AI. but now you can start to get into actually creating documents. So we're seeing out in the market that, you know, AI tools looking to either auto-populate parts of the document based on data that it's gathered or data it's brought from the loan system, or, you know, just creating the whole document based on templates that have been kind of approved with, you know, the verified, you know, we've based on the data that we've already analyzed in the process so far, we've identified that these are the forms that need to be filled out, or this is the data, the templates that we need to be able to then populate and produce these packages for closing. And so again, by using the AI to do that, what we see a lot is customers, especially when they integrate with Prism Doc, as they're reviewing these documents, it kind of becomes a combination of the AI to help find some of the content, the advanced search tools in Prism Doc to highlight and locate that document and call out that document for the end user. And then, of course, you know, using things like OCR to make sure that the document is searchable, because a lot of times, especially when you're talking about, you know, a mortgage application, there's going to be things like we talked about driver's license. There's going to be documents that are scanned, pictures of something that are uploaded, whether that's stuff related to the inspection report on the house, bringing all that stuff in there and making that support this final package, making sure it's then put together and can be distributed and included in the final package. Then the final part is just closing and funding. So, you know, as you get to this stage, there's, you know, probably less of the AI involved in this part, other than the automated, maybe audit, you know, the audit trail part of that, maybe doing some checks on that type of stuff. But this is where you can kind of feed it right into a system, whether you have, you know, this is part of your application, whether you're looking to integrate something like DocuBee, where you want to be able to just kind of feed it into that final system for kind of routing, approval, signing, that type of thing. A lot of times this still requires in-person signing, right? So there's going to be that, you know, it could be in person or it could be a digital signature, but if it's in person, they're printing those things out. At some point, those get scanned back in, and then they get filed back in the system. And then now you're introducing, again, AI to help extract the data, file the document, you know, tag the documents, classify the documents so they can be filed, maybe extracting data that can be used to automatically populate the loan servicing system. So all of those things are kind of, again, kind of wrapping it up and bringing that together. So it's just kind of a look at one example industry where the technologies around automated document processing can really create a lot of efficiencies. And these things are largely, like I said, driven by either APIs or SDKs that in the background are doing some of this processing, as well as integration with things like AI. So how do we future-proof that? So if you go back to this slide and we talk about, you know, what we were doing or what we're doing today, where we're writing all these API calls, and anytime I want to set up a new process, I've got to write all these calls, or if I want to change something in this process, I need to, you know, write new API calls into my application to do that. And it kind of becomes a little cumbersome, but also, how do I take advantage of all the emerging technologies? So as new functionality comes out with AI, there's lots of opportunity here for things around document translations. You know, you might need to translate to different languages, maybe that just complete, you know, using AI for specific text extraction, as we talked about, for like datas for forms or populating loan application systems. How do you take advantage of that in a very efficient way? And so what we're working on here at Accusoft is we want to make that world look like this. We're working where you can write essentially 2 API calls where you can send your document in. So that's usually going to be, you know, done on an ingestion process as you're bringing a document into your system. But it could be, you know, you could have a process for, you know, documents that are uploaded by the mortgage applicants, and then you could have processes that are set up for, you know, closing. And when we're publishing or, you know, outputting documents for closing, that could be a different process that it goes through. But the idea is that as the technology evolves, and specifically as like new AI is introduced into this, do we have to go back to the drawing board and have developers add that into our process every time? Or is there something we can do where we can just, using a front end like user interface tool, where we can go in and update these and modify these? So what we're working on here is a Prism Doc, Intelligent Document Processing Manager. Which this is just in development, something we're working on in Q2. Starting this year, so where you can go in and select what are the things that I need in my process, and just through UI can add those. So my developers can then, your developers at your company can then write the one code once to call the process ID. And from then on, you don't have to redevelop anything. You can just go in and use the process manager tool to go in and update the document process, either to add something, remove something. So as new AI technology comes out, you can take advantage of that. So today, with Prism Doc, for example, in our integration with IBM Watson X, we have PII detection, and then of course we can do auto redaction through that. We can do things like tagging, automatic classification. We can do automatic summaries. We've started to work on contextual-based redaction. We're redacting information based on the context of how it's used. And we have lots of other things that we're bringing that are really exciting. And so what we want to be able to do is help, again, future-proof for our customers, where they can take advantage of those things just for testing. If they wanted to say quickly go in, add some new AI functionality into the process, run some documents through it and see what it looks like. Or they want to actually be able to deploy that into production, and we want them to be able to take advantage of that technology. So what we've done is we've introduced this as part of what we call Prism Doc Enterprise. So it's intelligent document processing for the modern enterprise, really focused around that AI-powered intelligent document processing as a core part of that, with that easy to use interface to be able to manage those processes. And again, this is all built so you can add this into your application, right? It's designed to be kind of a back-end processing tool for your application, so that it's seamless to your end users, that the documents come in and they run through these processes. Or if you build functions into your application where somebody sends a document to a specific process, all that happens in the background, and the processing of the documents, like I showed at the very start, where all those little automated things happen, that just happens in the background. And people send a document in, and you get a document out with all the processing done that you wanted. So that's a little bit about Prism Doc Enterprise. And this is, we'd be happy or really excited to talk to you about it. So if there's anything you saw here today that is of interest, we do have at the end, we do have a QR code you can scan to fill out a form, and somebody from our company will reach out to you. So let me see what questions we have here today. All right, so the first question I got, this question comes up a lot. So they're asking about the AI functionality specifically. If this is something that you can host yourself for security reasons. And the answer is yes, you can. We offer, through our integration with IBM Watson X, you can use either IBM Cloud connection through IBM Cloud, or you can self-host the IBM Watson X, and our technical team can help you with the requirements to stand that up. The next question is this product going to be open source? Is there an expected commercial client cost? So, I mean, this is a product that we are selling. So this is what we've done here is we've built some components that you can stand up in containerized environments, and there's an AI processing hub and the intelligent document processing manager are part of that containerized environment, as well as the Prism Doc environment. And that all pieced together will give you a lot of these back-end tools. Now, some of the things we talked about in the mortgage process are not necessarily things that we have today, and we can talk about the things that we do have, as I mentioned, the tagging, classification, summarization, PII. we have things on the roadmap. And a big part of the idea here is that as these new things are coming in, because they're rapidly coming in, we want our customers to be able to take advantage of those. You know, that we want them to be able to take advantage of them right away without having to do any development. So it's asked about fraud detections based on AI training or customized rules for data. So things like fraud detection would be, you know, something that you would probably develop specifically, you know, through a trained model on your own for your type of documents. Now that said, you know, we could look at AI models and test AI models to detect for fraud, but we don't. That's probably more something that you would want to do some training on. But that's a good point. That's a good question. You know, that's one of the benefits of having that trusted partner with AI. So as we work with our customers in their document processing needs, and we have a lot of APIs and SDKs that can be used to support these processes. And so as they build out those processes, as we start to continue to evolve with the AI stuff, if there's use cases that you have that are very specific, where we think that AI can be leveraged to solve that, one of the things that we can do is we can always bring in our partners at IBM to help talk about how the technology can be brought in to solve that. So this is a great question. Will this work for things outside of real estate? I'm in aerospace. Yes, absolutely. You know, when I was putting this webinar together, I was thinking about, you know, this document processing is document processing, right? And the specific needs for every industry are going to be, you know, a little bit different, but the kind of core underlying things that we talked about, you know, there's a lot of things that kind of translate over. And, you know, I thought about putting together slides that talked about, you know, insurance and, you know, manufacturing and, you know, legal e-discovery and, you know, banking, finance, all spaces where we have customers. But that's just a lot of different things to cover. When I used mortgage application process as an example, just because start to finish, it touches on a lot of the types of technology that are available. But yeah, absolutely. I'm sure there's some use cases in aerospace, and you know, we'd love to talk to you more about that. What are some of the other major use cases of Prism Doc in addition to loan processing? So that's a good question. We do see a lot of people using our technology in the legal e-discovery space, especially in the area of like tagging and classification, and just viewing, you know, viewing and searching of documents as well. There's a lot of use in insurance and banking and finance as well. Those tend to be pretty much anywhere there's documents that need to be viewed, processed, you know, tagged, searched, summarized, all of those things. That's where we find a lot of people wanting to plug in the Prism Doc application. And then just kind of to reiterate on that, the Prism Doc is designed as a suite of APIs that you can then build functionality on within your application. So it's largely sits in the back end and is driving a lot of this functionality for you again. So you don't have to do all that development. So you can, you know, get new features to market faster, you know, and be able to focus kind of on your core business and take advantage of this functionality that's already built. And then as far as, you know, if there's anything else in this presentation that you'd like to see again or talk more about, as I said before, we are, you know, really happy to get on a call with you to talk through more specifics about your use case, right? Let's talk about what your document processing workflows look like today. What are the areas that you're looking to create efficiencies? And we can talk about the tools that we have, or tools that are, you know, in the near future that are coming that could be beneficial to you and helping create those automations. Also, we'd like to hear from you, like, are there things that we hadn't thought of, you know, that would be really important? So we definitely would love to have a conversation with you. If you scan this barcode right here, you can just fill out a quick form, and then somebody will get right back to you, and we'll set up a more of a one-on-one conversation so we can just kind of talk about your specific needs. Got another question. Someone asking about virus detection. Do we have anything in the roadmap for that? I would say we don't today because there's a lot of virus detection, providers out there already. So I'm not sure that that's one that we would ever want to get into, but it's actually a great question. I don't know if that's something that AI is being used for it all today. So I'll take that back to our friends over at IBM and see if they've heard of any use cases around that. But it's an interesting thought. It looks like that's the end of our questions. I hope everybody found this useful. Really, this is designed to kind of just get your mind thinking about the possibilities of using some automated document processing and taking advantage of things like the APIs that are available in Prism Doc, along with some of the AI features that we have today, or the AI features that are coming, and just really taking a step back and thinking about the end-to-end processes in your organization and what your end users are doing, and what are the things that are taking up time, what are the areas where there's things are being missed, or you're failing to comply with regulations, and data checks could help. So what are those things? And like I said, we'd really like to talk you more about your document processing needs and how we can help support you with that with Prism Doc. So thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon. Again, thanks for your time, and we'll see you on our next webinar.